At Thanksgiving dinner, just as I was about to take a bite of cold stuffing, Lena stood with the same smug poise she'd always worn when throwing someone under the bus and announced, "We voted, and you're not family anymore." The room froze for a second, then exploded into applause. My cousin Laura clapped like she was front row at a concert. Uncle Mitch raised his glass in cheers, and my own mother chuckled, murmuring, "Well, someone had to say it." My father didn't look at me. He just took a swig of beer and muttered, "Probably for the best." I stared at my plate, heart thudding, jaw tight. "Wow," I said, pushing back my chair slowly. "You actually rehearsed this?" Lena beamed. "You've been toxic for years. We're just done pretending." "You're not family," my mother added flatly, as she reached for the cranberry sauce like we were discussing the weather. "Unanimous." I took a deep breath, opened my bag, and pulled out a thick folder, placing it calmly in the center of the table with a heavy thunk that sliced through their laughter. "I figured this might happen," I said, folding my arms. "So I came prepared." Lena snatched it up, smirking like she always did when she thought she'd already won. But then she opened it. Her smile disappeared. Her face turned gray. She flipped one page, then another, and then screamed. A raw, guttural scream that made the whole table jolt. Her chair clattered to the floor as she backed away like the folder was on fire. "You monster!" she shrieked. "You messed up freak!" The room went dead silent. Mark, her husband, picked up the folder and started flipping through the pages. "Is this?" he asked, wide-eyed. "It's all real," I said. "Every word, every receipt, every screenshot." My mother's jaw hung open.
No one moved. "You were so sure I wouldn't fight back," I said, standing slowly. "So sure I'd be the quiet one, the doormat, the cash cow. But your little show? It's over." I turned to Lena, eyes locked. "You want to know what's in that folder? Let me tell you." "But first," I said, "let me explain how we got here, because this wasn't sudden. This exile of mine, it was years in the making, layered with every mocking joke, every backhanded compliment, every time I was overlooked, ignored, used." Lena had always been the favorite, the charming liar in a golden crown. I was the quiet one, the private one. I didn't need applause, and for that, they resented me. They called me ungrateful, difficult, cold. But I moved out at 19, paid my way through college, worked 2 jobs, never asked for help. And still, they wanted more. They expected me to smile through every insult, bankroll Lena's emergencies, and never speak up. But over the years, I kept receipts, text messages, forged signatures, credit card bills I paid off in silence, business loans in my name that she defaulted on. And when Lena used one of my photos, my art, in her campaign without credit or permission, I started building the folder, quietly, carefully, waiting. Now, the whole room knew. The stolen money, the emotional blackmail, the fraud. Lena's carefully curated image shattered before dessert. And I didn't gloat. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood tall and said, "You're right. I'm not your family, not anymore. And thank God for that." Then I picked up my coat and walked out, the silence behind me louder than any applause I'd ever needed. Lena had flunked out of 2 majors, spent a year gallivanting across Europe, finding herself, and eventually returned home to marry Mark, the human embodiment of a LinkedIn profile in a blazer. Their wedding? I paid for half. My parents claimed they couldn't afford it, though they somehow managed to take a 2-week cruise immediately after. I didn't complain. I never did. Even when they called me the family accountant, I quietly footed the bills. Dad's dental surgery, Mom's overdue heating bill, part of Cousin Laura's tuition when her scholarship fell through. Always with a hollow "thank you," laced with that familiar tone, the one that said, "Of course you'd help. After all, you don't have a family of your own." And maybe that was the crack that finally split everything open. I'm single, no kids, no drama, just me, my work, and my dog. And in their eyes, that meant I had no life, nothing better to do than bankroll theirs. Lena treated me like a walking safety net. When Mark lost his job, I got the first call. When her car died, you make 6 figures. What's $2,000? When her son needed therapy and insurance wouldn't cover it, I paid. I always helped. Because I told myself that's what family did, until helping turned into duty, then expectation, then entitlement. First came the jokes. You brought wine? Must be nice to afford the good stuff. Of course you're early. You don't have kids. Wish I could work late and avoid my husband too. Then came the cruelty, wrapped in fake concern. You're so cold. Maybe that's why you're still alone. You don't understand real stress. You don't have a real life. You're just bitter no one needs you. Except, they did. All the time. Behind closed doors. Financially. Desperately. Until the day I said no. Lena had texted, "Hey, can you co-sign for a small business loan? Mark and I want to open a wellness cafe." I replied, "No." Her response? "Wow. Really?" Then silence. Suddenly I was cut out. Mom stopped calling. Dad replied in one-word texts. I wasn't invited to the last family dinner. Lena blocked me on Instagram and posted a story about cutting out toxic energy. But I didn't chase them. I didn't beg. I pulled receipts. Literal receipts. I'd kept them all. Bank transfers, email requests, text threads. Over 5 years, I'd sent more than $78,000 to my family. $78,000. $8,000 for Mark's rehab. $2,300 for Lena's emergency dental work that turned out to be elective veneers. $1,500 for Dad's back surgery. $12,000 to bail out Mom's credit cards. $6,000 for Laura's college expenses. $4,500 for a so-called family emergency that turned out to be a trip to Cabo. Not once did any of them offer to pay me back. They just took. And when I stopped, I became the villain. So I built a folder. Inside, a detailed timeline of every payment I made, every text begging for money, screenshots of Lena calling me manipulative after I said no to the loan, even the private Facebook comment where she called me a cash cow with no spine. She didn't know I had access, but I did. So that's what she saw when she opened the folder on Thanksgiving. That's what made her scream, because she wasn't just exposed, she was dismantled. Fact by fact, page by page. And while Lena unraveled, the rest of the family sat stunned, confronted by the truth they never thought I'd dare to speak.
My mother looked ready to faint. And Mark? He turned to me with wide eyes and whispered, "You kept all of this?" Yes, I did. Because deep down, I always knew the day would come when I'd stop being their silent backup plan and start being the reckoning. Mark stared at the damning line, $4,200 to cover Lena's credit card, charged at a Santa Monica hotel with someone named Alyssa, and asked, "What is this?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defending myself. I was simply showing them the truth. My mother's voice trembled. "You kept records of everything?" I met her eyes, calm and steady. "You never remembered, so someone had to." Lena stood frozen, pale, fists clenched, her eyes flicking between Mark, me, and the folder now splayed open like a confession booth. "This is a violation," she hissed. "You had no right to—" "No right?" I echoed, rising slowly. "You just stood in front of this entire family and declared I wasn't family. Everyone clapped. And now you're mad I came prepared?" Mark turned another page, face hardening. "What's this about Santa Monica?" Lena spun toward him. Don't start. Who's Alyssa? He asked, quieter now, but sharper. Why were you at a hotel for 3 nights? On my credit card. Her silence was damning. Can we just calm down and be reasonable? My mother begged, hands raised like surrender would undo years of damage. Sure, I said flatly. Let's be reasonable. Like when you called me a parasite, while cashing the check I sent you. She flinched. That's not fair. We were under stress. No, I cut in. You were under stress, and I bailed you out, every single time. And the one time I say no, suddenly I'm toxic? My father, silent until then, finally muttered, You're making this bigger than it is. I turned to him, voice dropping like a hammer. You let them do this to me for years. You knew. You heard it. You saw it. And you said nothing because it was easier than confronting them. He didn't argue. Didn't even deny it. Lena slammed her hand down. You're just bitter. No one needs you anymore. I met her glare. Wrong. I'm not bitter. I'm done. She scoffed. You're pathetic. Do you know how dramatic this looks? Bringing a folder, printing receipts? You think this makes you a victim? No, I said, stepping closer. It makes me someone who finally stopped being your ATM. You didn't want a brother. You wanted a walking wallet. You chose to help, she shouted. You didn't have to. And yet every time you expected it, I said, voice tight. Until it wasn't help, it was obligation. And when I stopped, you cast me out. You voted, you clapped. My voice cracked, not from sadness but from fury, years of it finally unbound. Mark stood now, folder in hand, his voice low. Is this true? He asked her. All of it? Lena had nothing left. No spin, no tears, no script, just silence. You lied, he said. About the hotel, about the money, about him. You made it sound like he was the problem. I had to, she snapped. He was turning everyone against me. No, I said. You did that all on your own. The room turned to stone. And then, as always, my mother tried one last time, voice dipped in syrup. Listen, honey, maybe we overreacted, but this is still family. Families fight. Let's just put this behind us. I didn't let her finish. You're not hearing me, she blinked. What? I'm not asking for peace. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm telling you, I'm done. Lena sneered, mask cracking. Oh, please, you've said that before. I looked her dead in the eye. Not like this. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out another envelope. What now? My dad muttered, clearly exhausted. I tossed it onto the table. Mark caught it before it slid off, opened it, and read the first line, his face draining of color. What is this? He whispered. I answered for him, crisp and clear. Power of attorney forms. For Mom. Revoked. Medical proxy. Revoked. Emergency contact? Removed. I'd already signed the papers. I was legally and emotionally no longer responsible for any of them. My mother gasped, stunned. You're cutting ties completely? She asked, her voice breaking. Completely, I replied, steady and resolute. Starting now. Tears welled in her eyes. You're being selfish, she choked. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. I turned to her, voice calm, final, and cold as frost. Number, you're not. Then I grabbed my coat, gave them one last look, and walked out, leaving them frozen at the Thanksgiving table, surrounded by cold food, colder truths, and silence thick enough to choke on. I didn't look back, not because it didn't hurt, but because for the first time in years I could breathe. I didn't go home right away. I pulled off the road near the lake where Dad used to take me fishing when I was a kid. I sat there in the stillness, staring at the unmoving water, and felt something rare and unfamiliar. Peace. Nothing pulling at me.
No one demanding anything. No guilt, no pressure. Just me, the night, and silence. The next day, nothing. The day after, still nothing. But by day 3, the messages started. First from Mom, 2 missed calls, then a voicemail. You really meant it? We were angry, but we're still your family." I didn't reply. Then came Lena. "You don't even realize what you've done." "Mark's filing for divorce. Are you happy? Something is really wrong with you." Then my dad. "You went too far." We all said things we regret. "But what you did was nuclear. Your mother is a wreck. Come fix this." Still, I said nothing. And strangely, I didn't feel guilty. I thought I would. I thought I'd lie awake at night, wondering if I'd gone too far. But instead, I slept like a stone. No more second-guessing every text. No more waiting for the next guilt trip emergency. No more late-night Venmo requests disguised as love. For the first time in a decade, my mind was quiet. I woke up early. I went running. I brewed coffee slowly. I made appointments I'd put off for years. Dentist, doctor, therapist. Not because I was broken, but because I was finally allowed to take care of myself. I rewrote my emergency contact list, removed my parents, changed my passwords, froze every joint account, blocked Lena on every platform. This wasn't revenge. It was release. A week after Thanksgiving, I got a message from Laura, my cousin, the one who clapped when they voted me out. "I didn't know you paid for my tuition. I'm sorry. I followed the crowd. You were always the one who actually helped." I didn't respond, but I read it. Twice. Then another message. This one from Mark. I filed the papers. Everything in that folder checked out. She cheated, lied, manipulated. Not just you, me too. You did the right thing. I should have left sooner. I hadn't expected that, but it landed. It meant something. A few days later, I did something bold. I applied for a new job in another city. Not to escape, but because I was finally free. Free from the guilt. Free from the cage of their expectations. No more. "You should stay close to home." No more. "Who will take care of them if you leave?" I started reaching out to friends I hadn't seen in years. People I'd withdrawn from to make space for a family that only took. And the wildest part? Some of them had read my post on Reddit. They reached out just to say, "We're proud of you. That was brave." No one asked for money. No one guilted me. Just kindness. Just honesty. Just people who saw me for who I really was, and had been all along. And for once, that was enough. More than enough. No one tried to twist the narrative anymore. Just quiet, simple support from the people who mattered now. When someone asked me if I regretted it, I thought for a moment before answering honestly. I only regret not doing it sooner. That should have been the end. In many ways, it was. But with people like them, nothing ends cleanly, especially when they begin to feel the sting of your absence. The weeks after Thanksgiving were blissfully silent. No phone calls, no guilt trips, just peace. Then came Christmas. On December 22nd, my mother sent a text. A photo of their living room, festooned with decorations, stockings on the mantel, and a large, conspicuous gap where gifts were usually piled. Her caption read, "It doesn't feel the same without you." Mia keeps asking why Uncle isn't coming this year. No apology, no accountability. Just that same manipulative undertone. "Look what you've done. Look who you're hurting." I didn't respond. On December 23rd, Lena tried calling. I let it ring. Moments later, a message came through. "I know I messed up. But you don't have to punish everyone. Just come by for Mia. She misses you." 2 minutes later, another. "Also, Mom and Dad are behind on their mortgage. I know you don't care anymore, but the bank called today. Thought you'd want to know." And there it was. The ask. Always dressed in guilt, always disguised as concern. But underneath it was the same as always. A request. I blocked the number. On Christmas Eve, Dad sent a message. You made your point. We get it. But enough is enough. We need help. We're still your blood. That night, I sat by my fireplace with a glass of wine, wrapped in the kind of silence they once swore would consume me. But it didn't. It saved me. And I was grateful for every second of it. Then in January, a strange number called. I picked up out of habit. Is this Kai? A man's voice asked. Yes. Who's calling? My name is Mark. I'm calling on behalf of your father. He mentioned you're the executor of the family trust. I didn't even blink. That role was revoked 2 months ago, I said calmly. It's been finalized by our attorney. My name is off everything. There was a pause. I see. Your father couldn't reach you directly and ask me to explore options. They're in a bit of a bind. Of course they were. The safety net was gone. The ATM was closed. Now they were getting creative. I hung up without another word. But the final blow came in February, when I received an envelope in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. My mother's. Inside was a 3-page letter. The first page was full of regret. We said things in anger. You've always been the strong one. We never realized how much we leaned on you. The second page dug into guilt. Your father's health isn't good. Lena's completely alone now. Mia is struggling. And the third page? That was the hook. We're selling the house. We're underwater on the mortgage. We just need a little help. Then we'll never ask again. Please, Kai, do it for your father, do it for the family. I sat with the letter in my hands and let every word settle. Every manipulative phrase twist itself through me. I let myself feel the weight they were trying to place on me. Again. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and dropped the letter in the trash. Because the truth is, they weren't asking for help. They were asking for access. Again. And I finally understood. They never wanted me back as a son or a brother. They just wanted the lifeline I'd always been. And this time, they weren't going to get it. They wanted the version of me who never said no, the one who paid without question, carried their burdens in silence, and called it love. But that version of me? He's gone. I'm no longer their scapegoat, their golden goose, the duct tape holding together a family built on guilt and denial. I am done. And the most terrifying part for them? I'm thriving without them. I moved to a new city, took a better job, found a bigger place, and started fresh. I volunteer on weekends now. Not because anyone expects it, but because I want to. I've built a life where no one calls me at midnight expecting me to fix their mess, where kindness isn't treated like currency, where I'm not punished for having boundaries. Do I regret helping them? Number. But I regret how long it took me to realize I was only ever valued for what I could give. You want to know what real peace feels like? It's not being surrounded by people who call themselves family. It's being free from those who only use that word when they need something. Months have passed. I didn't think sharing this would matter, but the comments meant more than I expected. To those who said, "They didn't deserve you," thank you. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. Some asked, "But what if they change?" I wondered that too. I waited. I hoped. But they didn't change. After the folder, the screaming, the silence, the letters, they didn't reflect. They regrouped. They got quiet, then calculated, then cruel again. Meanwhile, I got free. I started real therapy, the kind where you stop trying to rescue everyone else and finally meet yourself. I began cooking for myself, walking in the mornings, sleeping through the night without flinching at every phone buzz. I stopped apologizing for protecting my peace. And yes, sometimes I think of Mia, of what she's learning by watching them, what she might mistake for love. but maybe she'll remember me as the one who said, "Enough." Maybe that'll matter. A few days ago, I got another letter. 3 words, in my mother's handwriting. We're still family. No apology. No ownership. Just another empty hook. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No sadness. No guilt. Just stillness. I tossed the letter and made dinner. That's why I'm here again. Because this space gave me the clarity my own family never could. Strangers saw me more clearly than those I was raised to love. So I'll ask you this. Did I do the right thing? Was cutting them off too cold? Or was it the first time I stopped pretending their weight was mine to carry? I don't have all the answers. But I know this. This time I'm not surviving. I'm living. And that, for me, is enough. Thanks for reading and still listening.